credit goes to an amazing task force that worked for 2 years after the visioning statement was done. But in addition, community participation was very high. It was very, very high. So this meeting tonight is kind of the opportunity for us. You'll be able to go to breakouts, and which we think is the best way to do this because we want everybody's participation. And as you know, if you've been doing these virtuals or any community meeting, if you have 100 attendees, by the time the meeting's over, you really haven't had an opportunity to hear from everyone. So with the breakout sessions, we got a ton of county staff who have volunteered to help us make this work. We'll have, I think I said 9 breakout groups, and everybody's voice will be heard tonight. I promise you that. The guidelines that we come up with, the design guidelines, they're going to address things like the sidewalks, the lighting, the street furnishings, the art, and the parks. It's going to, what is it going to look like out there whenever we're done? And they will be used, we will expect owners, developers, county staff to use the guidelines we come up with to eventually evolve McLean into a more attractive community. So I'm going to once again thank the advisory group. What we did, there is, many of you know this. I hate to be redundant, but not everybody knows everything. So I'm going to say the McLean Planning Committee has been around forever. They are the community representatives. They are appointed not by me, but by the McLean Citizen Association, McLean Chamber of Commerce. The surrounding neighborhoods have representatives, and then the property owners have representatives. So they've been around forever helping us with the planning process, any issue involving planning in downtown McLean. So I asked them, they were the natural to work on a committee to help directly work with staff to put this together and help elicit community participation. So I thank the McLean Planning Committee, not just for this effort, but for all their efforts over the years. Again, before I turn it back over, and I will in 1 minute, I just want to thank county staff. They've been hanging in there with us through a visioning statement, through a planning process, a couple of rezonings on the side, and now this design standards effort, guidelines effort. So we thank you, and particularly want to thank those county staff who aren't necessarily directly involved in this process, but who have volunteered to help us this evening because we needed more bodies in terms of making sure we could have enough breakout groups. So anyway, with that, I thank you. I look forward to working with you. Hopefully we'll have quite a good evening. And Joanna, I'm going to hand it right back at you.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Supervisor Faust. I am going to share my screen, so you'll stop seeing everybody around. But let me go to the beginning here and see all my talking points. Okay, so first of all, to get started tonight, I just want to introduce the team that we're working with here. I'm Joanne Phoebe. I work in the Community Revitalization section of the Department of Planning and Development. My background is in urban design and do a lot of development review and plan amendment stuff. I'm supported here tonight with Sarah and Elizabeth. Sarah is going to be handling all of the technical assistance, all of the issues with the technology being this virtual meeting. And Elizabeth is going to be monitoring the chat. So the primary way that we're going to communicate when we're in this whole group section, before we go to the breakout groups that Supervisor Faust mentioned, is it's just too much to have everybody on mic and talking. So if you would please, I'll show you where the chat function is, but if you've got questions or thoughts that you just want to share, feel free to include that in the chat, and we'll be not only monitoring that for answering questions, but also we'll keep a recording of that for after this workshop so that we capture all of your thoughts. So as Supervisor Faust mentioned, we're here with 18 staff who will be facilitating you during the small group set discussions. And there'll be 2 people in each one of your rooms to help and work with you. So as Supervisor mentioned, Fairfax County is updating our urban design guidelines for downtown McLean. These guidelines will replace some existing McLean open space standards that were developed about 20 or so years ago. And by these updates will utilize new best practices and incorporate high quality urban design. And our purpose here today is to listen to your ideas about the features you want to see in McLean. This is the first, really the first step in developing these guidelines. We've only just initiated an advisory group who will help us with specific language for these guidelines and specific ideas, but this is the night tonight to sort of kick things off with the bigger picture ideas and really hear from you about your preferences. So the questions we're going to ask pertain to your desired experiences and really how you want the public realm to look. So this is mostly related to the sidewalk areas, parks and plazas, as well as how buildings and development sites engage with that public realm. So how do buildings front the sidewalks? How do parking lots work? Those kinds of things. So our agenda for this evening is to, sorry, one second. We're going to kick things off with a softball but important question. That's our icebreaker. Then Sarah's going to break us into these smaller groups where you're going to use a virtual whiteboard to answer a series of questions. We're going to use an app called Jamboard to do that. Nothing you need to download. We're just going to, it's a way for us to all interact together on the same screen. But the facilitators will walk you through how to use it. Then we're going to come back together and do some visual preference polling as a whole group. And we'll also hear a summary from each of these small groups to learn what others discussed. And then finally, I'll mention next steps to share how you can stay involved throughout this project, which is going to take the majority of this year to get through. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please, like as I mentioned, keep yourself muted until we break into smaller groups. Then definitely come off mute because we want to talk through these ideas. Questions and comments should be entered into the chat. And I tried to take a screenshot of the tools that you may want to use during this this whole meeting. So the first one is if you see on the left, there's a little, it looks like a couple of people that you'll see the entire list of participants. The next button over to that is the chat. So if you click on that, it'll open up a bar, typically on the right side of your screen, that will, oh, I'm sorry, it's not advancing, my bad. Why isn't this one? There we go. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. So that you can see the participant icon on the left, then the chat function is next to it. So if you click on that, it'll open up a toolbar and you can type right into that to add chats. And that shows up on everybody's computer. Everyone else who's in this workshop tonight will see that chat. Next to that is some emojis. So if you just want to, smile at a comment or an idea, feel free to do that. And then beyond that is the camera tool, which I encourage everybody to use your camera, especially during the breakout rooms, so people can see your reactions and things. It's always helpful. And finally is the microphone tool. Beyond that, you shouldn't need the other ones. So I just want to go through a little bit of the project background. And how we got to this point. And the supervisor really already mentioned that quite a bit. Okay. So as he mentioned, a new comprehensive plan was adopted last summer. And the purpose of this workshop is to update the area's design guidelines, the same area that was that the comprehensive plan amended. These guidelines complement the comprehensive plan. They will not change the plan. So that's just a really important note tonight. The plan discussed a lot of urban design features, everything from building heights to dimensions of streetscapes, and we're not opening up that for discussion. This is really how to implement those ideas and detail them out further. So just as an example, you know, there was a streetscape determined for Old Dominion Drive, and it included certain dimensions for street trees, for sidewalks, for a building zone, but what we don't know is what those things look like. It might have a dimension of it, but does it have edging to it? What kind of trees would be planted in it? Should there be landscaping underneath the trees? There's lots of questions, and all of those features need to be determined. And so those are the things we're going to start to talk about tonight. So this map shows where the guidelines will apply. And if you think about the intersection of Old Dominion Drive and Cambridge Road as the sort of center of that, the Community Business Center goes all the way up to Dolly Madison, and also points south past the Balducci's Shopping Center, and then if you go down Cambridge Road, you'd be past the Giant Shopping Center, and then all the way up to where Cambridge Road meets Dolly Madison and Solana Village. So it's a pretty big area, and it's mostly the commercial areas with some of the surrounding residential. So just a few highlights from the comprehensive plan before we get started. There's a number of recommendations in the plan regarding land uses, building heights, street design, public facilities, affordable housing. Some of the urban design recommendations is that McLean was organized into 3 zones, with the center zone, as you can see here on the, oh gosh, it's still not advancing. I'm sorry, there's just some disconnect between the 2 screens. Okay, so you can see the center zone outlined in blue on the screen, which is the area that has the greatest density potential. In some cases up to 7 or 10 stories. If there's a bonus height that can be added if somebody provides a signature park space within that area. And then there's sort of concentric circles of development so that as you start to transition to the residential neighborhoods beyond, there's sort of a lessening of the density and a lessening of the changes of the existing conditions as you move outward from the center. There are also many environmental and quality of life recommendations in the plan, everything from tree-lined streets, creating more sustainable community by applying technologies to stormwater and resource conservation, this idea of developing a network of green spaces and continuous green corridors along some of the streets, and then the signature urban park that can be located in that center zone area to really become the heart of the new community. And as I mentioned, affordable housing and also public art being very important. So these guidelines, as we said, will not supersede the comprehensive plan, and they'll just build on those recommendations and offer strategies and examples of how to implement it. Design guidelines are used with new developments as a way to help evaluate a project and give the developers the information on what type of sidewalks to construct, how the building should meet up to those sidewalks and create that sort of ground floor experience like you can see in this picture to the left. They are also consulted as part of capital projects that are completed by Fairfax County. They're not regulatory. They're intended to be applied flexibly so that they don't limit good development, but there are lots of ways to achieve these results, and we don't want to be overly prescriptive and stymie new development. So the guidelines for McLean are going to focus on a handful of areas, mostly streetscapes and public realm features such as paving materials, street furnishings, lighting, gateways, public art. We're going to use this term streetscape a lot today. You can see those main elements in this bottom picture. There's the sidewalk through area, which we want to typically keep clear. The building zone, which is a space directly adjacent to the building. In this case, this image has a very small building zone of only maybe a couple of feet. And then the landscape panel, which is the area between the sidewalk and the curb. All these elements can range in size depending on the adjacent uses, the type of roadway that is there, and how busy we expect it to be. And you might need larger building zones for things like outdoor dining, for example. Let's see. So that's a little bit of an overview. But before we get into our first icebreaker question, I want to just establish some ground rules for this, since we are all working collaboratively. But it's really important to know that we're all here to listen, share, and learn. We don't want to really limit the good ideas and suspend. So please suspend judgment because there will be opportunities for you to really express your preferences as these guidelines develop. Feel free to piggyback or agree with others. You can do that a lot of ways. You can say, I agree with Carol Herrick on her idea for, creating a more historically relevant CBC, or you can even comment with your emojis by smiling at someone. Keep written comments short. Less than 10 words is great. It's easier for us to read if you're doing short individual comments rather than trying to lump a whole bunch of comments together in one response. And then during the breakout groups, please speak one at a time. Avoid hogging the airwaves with speech making, and please be patient with the technology. We're all sort of learning through this, and this is one of our first times. This is my first time using these tools in this large group. So hopefully this goes well, but you never know. So to get started, let's give this a shot with our first question. Let's see here. So if you would open the chat function, as I said, it's the little circle that has the two little lines in it. Make sure that's open. And if you would respond to this question, what are positive attributes of McLean? Try to keep it to maybe 5, no more than 10 words. And how about up to 3 responses per participant? So I'll give everybody a minute or two to think and start to include things in your chat.
Joanne, while people are responding in the chat, I did want to point out we have Maggie Law has her hand raised. So Maggie, I'll go ahead and unmute you now, or looks like maybe you are unmuted, but can you talk?
I don't have the chat capability.
Oh. So you don't see that set of icons at the top or on the side that...
Or anywhere.
Okay.
I don't either have it.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind just writing them down, and I will reach out to you afterwards, or you can email me, and we'll get them into the record at least.
What is your email address?
Yep, I'll post it. Oh, no, let me read it out for you. It's going to be at the end of this presentation, but I'll read it to you for now while people are adding things. So it's Joanne, Joanne, dot Phoebe, F as in Frank, IE, B as in boy, E, at fairfaxcounty.gov.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give everyone one more minute, and then I'll read some out. So I see a lot of comments surrounding the idea that things are very convenient. There's close proximity to things that easy access to shopping and local businesses. So the level of convenience. I see a lot of notes about small scale or low rise buildings. Lots of ideas about local and small businesses. And that's something we've always seen as such a positive aspect of McLean is there are probably, as compared to many of our other community business centers, there are so many small and long-standing businesses in the community. It sounds like something that people want to preserve. Good parks nearby, small scale, not overwhelming. Very nice. It's important to have an area like this where you can go. You don't feel like you need to go to a big mall every time to just get the kinds of things that you need. I see that comment, retail basics, without having to go to Tyson's Corner. Great. Well, as that's wrapping up, feel free to add any last ones in, but that's a very good start for us. Sarah is going to send you all to your rooms, and you all go ahead and introduce yourselves, and the facilitators will take charge in there. And we'll see you back in about 1 hour, and look forward to hearing all of these, all the ideas that you have. So thank you so much. It probably will take about 10 to 15 seconds at least.
It looks like they're about to open.
Hey, Sarah, Maggie is in Laura's group, but I also see her here. What's going on with Maggie? Maggie and Carol, you guys are there's trouble with
We're the troublemakers.
Still spinning on my end. It might be still sending people, so let's wait just a few seconds. Not sure.
Barbara, Ryan, did you just log in for the first time?
Yes, but I'm multitasking, so I.
This is
Listening,
Barbara.
but-
I'm here, but I couldn't see anything. So I'm just trying to get oriented here. I just found my.
Okay, we're gonna give Sarah a couple of minutes to try to figure out. We've got a handful.
Did you hear
of
me,
people.
Joanne?
Yeah.
Is there a way
Okay,
to
so
see
don't put me in a
everybody?
room, I'm fine.
No, not you, Barbara. There's another
Oh.
Barbara here that's waiting.
Oh, sorry, okay.
No, it's okay.
Is there a
Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, I think I hear you.
Miss O, did you have a question?
There's no name attached to me, but I'm Kathleen.
Kathleen, okay. I'm not sure. Yeah, so there's like a few people that are Sarah's trying to get into rooms. You're one of them. James and Kathleen, you guys are one.
Hi.
Karina? Hi.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I got kicked out of Teams. I'm on Teams mobile. I was in room 6. Would it be possible to bring me back in?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
I'm working on it. There's a couple ping backs I'm working through right now. So if you were
Hi, Sarah. I was in room 6. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Hello?
Hi. Yeah, I was in room 6, but I don't see anything on my screen. It's just completely a black screen. And I refreshed a couple times, and it always like that. I can
Okay.
hear someone's talking, but I don't see anything.
Are you on your phone by chance?
No, I'm on my laptop.
Okay. There were a couple people who got pinged back. I think you were one of them, and I just reassigned you. So it's spinning right now. Hopefully it's sending you back shortly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Anne.
Um,
In the background,
Can
that
you
is
hear
what
me?
I'm doing.
Can
Thanks
you
for
hear
having me.
Can you hear
Thank you,
me?
Katie.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I on the right team? This is Ann
Okay.
Seaman.
Yes, and
I am sending SOS to our tech support, trying to figure out what's going on
my
with
screen-
Maggie and Robert.
My screen
And
went
have
totally.
you been able to unmute yourself yet? It doesn't look like it. Okay, I'm very sorry.
okay, sorry, we're working through these technical issues. For some
Hello?
reason,
Can
there's
you-
a few. If you are, you've been
Hello,
kicked out
this
of
is
your room. I'm
Margaret
trying
calling.
to.
Yes, something happened to me when I tried to, and now I can't log back in. I mean, I was doing the Teams thing, and when you start to break out, I was disconnected.
Okay, I think Sarah can try to send you back into the room.
Now, if you are on your phone, there's no way for you to get into a breakout room.
So I should now just, okay, I'll hang up now.
Unfortunately.
I am online and I just had a gray screen.
Okay.
I had the same thing.
I keep trying to reassign you all, so I'm not.
When I try to, when I click on join breakout room, it goes to like a gray screen, like she said.
Yeah.
Let's see. More time.
Sure.
This is Dennis. I went off and came back on. Can you hear and see me?
Yes, Dennis, we
Yeah.
can.
For some reason, there's some of you are getting in them and then getting kicked out. I'm not sure what the issue is. I keep trying to reassign you guys.
6:30, so I just joined, so I missed all the conversation that preceded going into groups. But I live in McLean. I'm on Great Falls Street. I'd like to walk to the business center. It's another issue though, because there are gaps in the sidewalks. I guess that's not the topic of this meeting. However, I am concerned about
Stephen, is there anything going on in room 4? It says I'm in room 4, but there's nothing happening. I see Sarah.
Oh.
I hear you in the main room.
I just saw the chat box. Hooray.
Great,
But
Maggie.
but I'm in the wrong, well, I don't know where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'm probably in the wrong place, but at least I can chat.
So I'm trying to get to chat group 5 if anyone knows the way.
Is there a way
Well,
we can join the rooms, or do we have to wait to be assigned to them?
I think we have to be.
Sarah has to assign you to a room.
When I was in group 5, I couldn't see. I just had a black screen. I didn't have any icons. I didn't have the chat or anything. So now I'm back here to the this part of the website or this part of the app.
I started doing this with the browser, then I downloaded Teams, exited the browser, and I think I'm back and you can hear and see me.
Yeah, we can see you, Dennis.
So you exited Microsoft Edge and now you're on the app?
Yes, I downloaded the app, the Teams app. It took a while to download. Then I was on twice. And I exited the browser interface, and I'm using Teams, and it seems to work.
I'm on the app also. Are we the room with Sarah and I'm not sure what everybody else's name is? No. Okay.
We're in limbo waiting to be assigned to a group.
Okay. So we're
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry, I've got this list and I can't unmute myself when I'm doing the breakout rooms. For some reason, many of you are showing as in a room, but you're not. You're here. So I'm trying to go through and unassign you and then
dear.
you.
Technology
So,
nightmare.
I'm not sure.
This is Brian Berry
Hey,
from
Brian.
McLean Planet. Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yes.
I was in a chat temporarily with David and others, but a number of us couldn't actually see anything. So when I pressed the cycle button up in the upper left of the screen, the kind of the clock with the arrow, it brought me back. So there's something about this that works, but something about assigning me to, I think I was in group 5 that didn't work.
Okay.
But I'll
Can we
just
try
know that.
closing all the breakout rooms and then reassigning?
What we'll try to do is maybe we'll give this like 5 minutes, and then whoever's here in this room, I'll go ahead and open up the same session, and we can work in here. Yeah.
I just tried to reassign you all.
Everyone?
So hopefully at least some of you get in. I don't know.
And then we'll just work in here. Otherwise,
sounds like a good plan.
Great.
Sarah, something's happening in 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay, I'll cross my fingers. Uh-oh. Let's see.
Miss O, you are still here, Catherine, right? Or is it Kathleen?
right, Kathleen.
Kathleen, okay. That's my middle name. Now I'll remember.
Okay.
Yeah, let me try you one more time because it says you're in room 4 right now, which is very.
Yeah, but there's nobody else here, right?
But yeah, there's a whole other group that's in room 4, so it's really strange.
Maybe take people out if they're stuck in those rooms.
I downloaded the app, so.
I don't think it's you guys. I think it's.
Can you hear me?
Yep, Margaret.
It says room 3 on my thing. We're in room 3.
Yeah, it's like you're floating between 2 places. Okay, well, I tell you what, for everyone that is still in this main area, if you can hear me right now, let's go ahead and we'll go through the questions together and do the same thing that they're doing in the sessions. So if you can see the chat that's on the, if you open up the chat function, there should be a link to Jamboard. If you want to click on that, let's see if we can get in together.
Hello, this is April. Can you hear me?
Yes, April.
Oh, finally. I can hear Chris's group. I was originally assigned to Chris. I have a black screen. I have nothing else, but I can listen, which is fine by me. then if I interact with you, I can also participate. I don't mind doing split like this. I'm really here to listen and learn.
Okay.
Yeah, so just so you know, I'm in kind of I'm in limbo. I'm in no
Okay.
man's land here,
Ah.
except at least I can communicate with you. So thank you. I'll just go along with what you're doing. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I see maybe about 7 people in our group here. So what we're using is this tool called Jamboard, and it's an interactive whiteboard for you to add some comments to.
They comment on the different design.
And what we're going to use today is one single tool called the sticky note. So if you are, if you're in here, you can see hopefully on the left-hand side, there's some tools. There's a pen tool, there's an erase tool, there's a select, and oh, Jamboard's not opening for Kathleen. Gosh, that is. And there's a sticky note tool, and the sticky note one, which is the 4th one down, is the one we're going to try to use.
Joanne, I will share my screen of the
Okay.
Jamboard so that you guys can follow along in case you are having issues opening it.
Okay.
And April has no screen. I only have this audio on the phone.
Okay. Well, we'll be talking a little bit, so.
I'll just listen, and then if you
Okay.
want my vote, ask me for my vote.
Perfect. Okay. And feel free to comment things, and I will just write them down. So the first question that's up on the screen is, what do you like about these street images? And so if you can't see them, there's a picture of King Street, typical Main Street. There's a residential street with some low scale townhouses and some porches. There's outdoor dining along sort of busy Main Street. There are nooks, areas where you can, sit and enjoy some community engagement. And so if you want to just add some notes using the sticky note function, feel free to add some comments about things that you like, things that you would like to see in McLean. I'll add one so you can see what I'm talking about. But does everyone see where the sticky note tool is? Yep. And if you want to add comments in the chat, that's fine as well. We can just incorporate them there. But I see a comment like wider sidewalks.
Yes. Joanne?
Uh-huh.
This is April. One thing I noticed in your slide, since I can't see what you're seeing, in your slide presentation, you showed a slide of a very wide, lovely sidewalk with bikers and walkers on the same wide sidewalk. I think the current plan is going to have a problem accommodating that, but a lot of people that I'm talking with want wide sidewalks, not 5 feet, not 6 feet. That's just totally inadequate. And so if that's helpful, thank you.
I'm adding that here.
Yeah, absolutely wide sidewalks.
Are we allowed to hop in on the phone call, or would you rather prefer us to write it in the chat or in the sticky notes?
Feel free. If it's easier to jump into this Jamboard that's on the main page, there's a link in the chat and you can see what's going on the screen.
I'm having issues with the Jamboard. It's just the page keeps refreshing and crashing on me, so I'll just speak my piece. But I also agree on the wide sidewalks. I really like how in the main street there is like places to sit, like shaded areas. That's a sense of community. That's like a 3rd place that I really like. I also agree with the wide sidewalks because unfortunately I bike around McLean a lot, and the sidewalks are completely inadequate, especially when there's already people on the sidewalks. There's just no space. And it's just very frustrating when you have like large, wide streets and then on-street parking, and then there's just not enough space for people to walk and bike, ignoring, of course, like sitting down, like space for outdoor dining and whatnot. So wide sidewalks.
Perfect. I'm adding all of this. our board here. What other ideas? What about how the buildings are adjacent to the sidewalk? I mean, is it important to you to have really sort of engaging frontage? Do you want to see, you know, because there's often a balance between parking and how buildings can really front the street. What are people's thoughts on that?
Joanne, this is
Yeah.
April. What I'm hearing is attractive frontage, of course. Retail is lovely, but people really appreciate the current open air parking. No underground parking. It's too much of a hassle. They want to be able to have easy access. Also, upfront parking, besides easy access, allows for skyscrape. You can see the sky. You can have sunlight. And again, with the wider sidewalks. Just in case I get cut off at any point, another observation about the streets, the other person mentioned, you know, the biking and everything. There was a mention in the plan, in the CBC plan, for narrower streets with parallel parking on the streets and meters.
Yes.
Residents are telling me absolutely not. That's not McLean. And besides being very unsightly, it's very unsafe to have parallel parking on the street with meters for bikers going by. The parallel parkers going in and out, they can open their doors, bikers can get hit. And it's unsightly. It's just not McLean. So something to consider, Joanne.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it the meters that people don't like?
Oh, the whole thing. They don't want narrower roads. A 22-foot wide road is insane. That would put 4 to 6 inches between the school buses and trucks. The parallel parking on the street is insane for safety issues with bikers trying to bike by and the doors opening and people trying to parallel park on a street, which is unsightly. It certainly does not put a good view shed. And the meters, absolutely not. That's not McLean, is what I'm hearing and what I also believe. But no, the parallel parking, it slows traffic and it's dangerous. These are safety issues with the narrow streets and the parallel parking on the street.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks,
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go on to the next question, which is, and this particularly piggybacks on the first, but and I am got all your comments, so please keep them coming in the chat because we'll add those to this as well. But I have pictures
Hi,
up.
I don't want to interrupt. I think Barbara has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I just kind of crash landed in this room, and I just want everybody to know, because I see a number of people on this call, on this breakout room, that I was in breakout room 4 and we were having tremendous technological problems, and I was getting audio from another break room, but we couldn't see anything and the screens were blacking out, and it's basically not happening. So I just want to make you aware of that. I logged out, I kind of came back in, and this is where I crash landed, and so I'm going to stay here. And I missed the question, so I'd love to contribute, but I don't really know where we are in the conversation. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So we are, we've got through our first question, which is regarding what, and if you go into the chat in this group, there is, and I can post it again, but there's a, there's a link to the Jamboard if you want to try to go in. Otherwise, you can just add your comments to the chat here, and and I can incorporate them.
And
so,
were we looking at these pictures for feedback?
Yes. Yep. But we're working on the second question here. So the second question is now, what do you want to change about McLean Streets? So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind flipping over to the next room if she can, but or if you want to try to go into the Jamboard that's in the link in the chat. So I have pictures of Dolly Madison Boulevard, Elm Street, Beverly Road, Old Dominion, Fleetwood, Ingleside. So, you know, if you think about the experience that you've had on those streets, what would you want to change about them? What kinds of things should we add to the design guidelines to make them different?
Joanne, it's Brian Barry. I don't think we should require the full brick with the concrete surround on all streets. I think it's,
Okay.
Expensive, time consuming. We've got some negative feedback from developers about heaving of bricks and how it can create some unevenness. I do generally like it, but I think that it's pretty prescriptive to make everybody on every street adhere to it.
Okay.
And we at McLean Planning Committee, we could not get McLean Properties on the redevelopment of the Giant, which is a by right project. We could not get them to commit to any new sidewalks that followed this plan, which is unfortunate.
Okay. Yep, I am aware of that, and by right is a challenge for sure. How do others? Well, we're going to talk a little bit more too about the bricks when we come back into the whole group. And so if we're really having a lot of trouble with the breakout rooms, we can always come back a little early and continue the discussion. So I'm sorry the technology hasn't worked as well. But what other people are thinking about with the sidewalks? What about street trees? Would you want to see more of those? Are they a problem to you?
I would like to see a lot more trees, but in particular, I would like to see native trees, and I'd like to see native. This is an opportunity wherever we are doing landscaping to modernize it. McLean has a lot of really old, invasive landscaping, and this is an opportunity to really improve that. And where we have turf, think about other kinds of native plants, but particularly the shrubs and the trees. Let's go with native. And that ties in with the stormwater management, which is, I know, a very huge priority in the CBC area.
Definitely agree with the use of native plants. I know that the Dolly Madison Library is doing a lot of interesting things with bioswales, introducing native plants. It's also a lot more sustainable in that it uses a lot less water, irrigation, and that could obviously help with like the budget and whatnot. Also bringing back a lot of native trees. I know that Franklin Sherman, the elementary school, is right nearby the redevelopment area. So perhaps some sort of like teamwork, like teaming up with local schools that already have a lot of greenery to like I guess create this like a more unified and more connected patchwork of green space and sustainable like drainage practices when we can. Like we have all this green space, like you see all this like dead basically like turf, and no one used it. If no one's going to use it, you might as well use it for something more productive and much more better for the environment.
Yeah, I really love that idea of kind of making this a community-wide effort, because then you'll bring the education with it as well, and people will really begin to understand the benefits of native plants, and to bringing in the schools and other community organizations, many of which are already very focused on that.
Agree.
We also heard about earlier. We heard about wide sidewalks, which, as I mentioned, the comprehensive plan does have dimensions, but we can incorporate a lot of ideas in the building zone. So what happens outside of that sidewalk to expand the sidewalk, to have the buildings, create spaces that are essentially like public space next to the sidewalk for people to, browse, to sit. What are people's thoughts about that?
Yes, that is Kathleen. I think that's important, but a lot of times that is on the developer to do that, because you really need a larger patio or a plaza. And sometimes when you try to crowd too much on the sidewalks, then it becomes difficult for the diners, and it becomes difficult for the pedestrians. And then people, have pets and strollers, and it gets to be a little too much. And so sidewalks don't necessarily have to do everything, I think it's more important that, and developers are often reluctant to assign space for plazas or patios.
Right. Unless we try to find ways to encourage it or make it beneficial to them. If they see value in adding more outdoor dining. I mean, COVID has changed that dynamic quite a bit. And more people are wanting to eat outdoors, and some of these trends are probably not going to go away from what we're hearing from the experts. So there may be more opportunity to have spaces like that.
And also bicycles, how do you include bicycles here? And because we have traffic is manageable, but it still isn't safe for bicycles in downtown McLean. It's not as if people are trying to, go on 123. It's more manageable within the downtown, but still it's just, that's something, a whole that needs to be addressed in total.
Yes.
And I think, on one of the slides that have been issued, I think it was by the CBC people, it did show bicycles on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Sharing sidewalks with pedestrians, which really isn't a good idea. There have to be designated lanes for the bicycles.
Yeah, I think there was a concept of a shared use path that sort of said, bicyclists should be sort of on one side of the sidewalk and pedestrians on the other.
Yeah, that just can't work.
Yep. This is Barbara.
It's not safe.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see how that can work. I am firmly in favor of safe bicycling in downtown McLean, but not at the expense of people walking on sidewalks.
I agree.
Thank you, April. As to the question about kind of dining areas, and I think that's great too, but I don't see none of these pictures would be appropriate for that.
Of the existing conditions.
Yeah, there's no place for people to sit. So without taking away from the sidewalk. So I'm all in favor of it where you have the space, but not on regular sidewalks where people are trying to walk and, do whatever.
Perfect.
I'll also add, as someone who bikes around McLean and has almost been hit by cars multiple times, the sidewalks are not really any better because there's not just pedestrians, but there's a lot of poles and all sorts of just infrastructure in the area that sometimes it's just too narrow for the bike, and so in that sense, shared paths also just don't work because they're unfortunately not wide enough for biking around, and why I also argue for protected bike lanes, because otherwise it's just a lot of space allocated. I mean, little space allocated for a lot of different people and uses.
This is Brian. I would agree with that. The sidewalks are relatively narrow, and there's a lot of signs for parking or other things, and also traffic signal posts that are in or right next to the sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's not great for bikes.
No.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can include in the design guidelines is strategies about how to hide and incorporate infrastructure in ways that either is less not so unsightly, where it's right at key corners and things. But if they plan for it early in the development, they can incorporate it under the sidewalk or in landscape areas that are really outside of these functional areas. So it takes good planning. I see some good comments in the chat as well. So we'll definitely get those incorporated. Should we move on to maybe the next
just
question?
one thing about accessibility, that downtown should be accessible.
And what would you mean by that?
Well, ADA accessibility for for disabled people.
Right. So you just mean the sidewalks should be better, wider.
Right. Yeah. And
what kinds of things are you seeing that make it difficult right now?
Well, any new construction, that everything would have to be fully accessible so that people could get around the entire CBC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a building code requirement now. And so, it's just a sort of a question of, what else can we do to even increase that? And some people would say that the pavers are not particularly accessible because they're bumpier and they tend to get more
There are things like grooved pavement so that you can feel, when you get to the intersection, or or textured that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, they have, the traffic signals can have sound for
Yes.
visually impaired people, that kind of thing. I don't think we have that here. No.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts
I have
before
a
we
quick
go on?
question
Uh-huh.
about accessibility. So I know, I mean, I've seen this. First off, I agree with everything in the chat, especially with like creating space, but also in accessibility, because obviously making spaces more universal design is good for everyone. Would McLean have jurisdiction over things like continuous sidewalks? In the sense that a lot of these places don't really have ramps when there should be, but there's stairs, or the intersection is very difficult for people with low mobility or with low vision, for example, because it goes directly into the street. And an alternative for that in a lot of places is to just to have the sidewalk be like one large continuous space, and it's like a small speed bump, so like cars can slow down to really watch for these people, for like just people walking around. Would McLean would this design code want to have jurisdiction over that, or is that more of a larger design code issue?
If you're talking about the inside, how the sidewalks would engage directly with the roadway, that is a bigger challenge. And no, McLean doesn't have jurisdiction over the streets. That VDOT controls all public streets in Fairfax County. So the only time we'll get unique things like that is if we have private streets that are managed by the property owner. But there are some things, VDOT is getting more progressive, and there are some things we can try to do. And in fact, we've been talking about doing some pilots, working with VDOT to test out some ideas in McLean. So there's a possibility of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me go on to the next question, which is, what kinds of amenities or attractions? We're going to shift from streets and sidewalks to some of the other public spaces. So what are some amenities and attractions that would be popular and draw the community into the area?
Well, water features, plazas.
Like the Palladium?
Yeah, what you have, the top picture on the left, a really, sustainable gardens, like you think about the High Line in New York City, Georgetown Waterfront Park. People flock to these areas where lawn has been replaced with native grasses and native shrubs and trees. And it's spectacular.
Yeah. The Highline has completely changed that part of New York, Chelsea, and brought incredible economic development.
Mm-hmm. And you have people who don't know anything about it kind of coming home and saying, wow, I saw this amazing park in New York City with all these grasses and native plants. And it just resonates with people to see these parks and this type of kind of prairie motif in a public urban environment.
Yeah. I love, as somebody said, I saw comments about, things that would draw young people to the area. That's very...
That'll do it. Yeah. It's a big deal with millennials.
Yeah, no, that was my comment. I recently graduated from high school, and all my high school friends and I basically just go to Chipotle and McDonald's, which is not really healthy, or something we should encourage. Because there's just no space to gather. But I really like the small park with water feature. How there's a lot of small benches, and it's kind of enclosed. It's like a good place for your friends to like hang out after school. It also, I think it'd be a lot. It can keep the community together, while also maybe if you put like a local business near there, support local businesses too. Like something, I think, for young people to sit around and engage with the community, I think is really important.
Okay.
Yeah, the picture on the upper right, is that Paley Park in New York City? Yep. Yeah, it's like a phenomenal, that water feature is amazing. Beautiful. Yeah.
It incorporates noise.
Right.
So you've got sound, you've got all the senses are being engaged.
Yeah.
Joanne, this is Brian. I like the water feature idea, and things like the Pritzker Fountain in Grant Park in Chicago come to mind. Now, that's got greater scale than we could have in in McLean. But I just want to make one comment. For the most part, the seating that we like in the pictures is permanent, durable seating. It's not chairs and tables.
Uh-huh.
So when we compare it to what we probably required as a county on JBG at Signet Park in McLean, it's different, right? As a builder developer, you know, permanent seating at the right height, it's easy to clean, it's easy to power wash, it's easy to maintain. You're not picking up or dropping off umbrellas and chairs and worrying about those kind of things.
So you're saying that within the public realm, more fixed features are better?
Yeah. Like even those chairs at Paley Park, that little niche park in Midtown Manhattan, those chairs are fixed.
I don't think Paley Park one is.
No, yeah. But I would agree
yeah.
generally with this statement.
Uh-huh.
Movable chairs are just very hard to manage.
Okay.
Can I ask you something about Signet Plaza?
Sure.
You know, there's no real small business there to supply that plaza. So I often go by the plaza and, you know, there's no one there. So I would say that you would have to have you know, a small restaurant or dining adjacent to the plaza or the patio, the outdoor space.
Yes.
So that people could get, you know, a drink or something, but it doesn't necessarily have to be dominated by that, but just in the vicinity.
Yep. I think that's a really great point, because otherwise there's often not a reason for somebody to go, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think someone mentioned this in the chat, but I also really like the possibility of art installations, especially if they could be local. Maybe like some sort of collaboration with the McLean Community Center, or maybe some like local schools. I think a lot of the spaces that we have in McLean can be like, some of them are very much like part of McLean and very strong part of identity, but other ones, they could be anywhere. And I think that's a shame when we have a lot of green space and we have a lot of potential, maybe like a bioretention area with some art or some like local like murals, like a pop-up installation, as someone mentioned, I think. But some sort of like bringing in localness through art, I think would be nice.
Let me shift to the next picture, because it's kind of, and feel free to keep adding comments here regarding the public spaces, but just one question, if I can poll everyone who's here, should we have more passive spaces, more meaning, you know, casual walking paths, seating areas, or should we have more active spaces that might provide space for, you know, specific events like a farmer's market, parks, playgrounds, or more of an equal mix? What are people's thoughts?
Don't think you'll get enough space in the CBC for parks or playgrounds.
Well, let's think of it less practically. For just in a perfect world, what kinds of things would you want to? Do you think it's better to have more passive, quiet spaces or more active rec?
I kind of see the CBC area as more of a passive, or a place to kind of get something to eat and socialize. And other parks in McLean provide that active place to do active things. We've got sport fields. We've got now McLean Central Park, you know, is going to have space for it. You know, they have the gazebo, and so I don't see the need to take away green space in what little green space there will be in the CBC for activities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gathering is a good activity.
Especially with COVID, those passive spaces are a good place to meet, you know, in a very healthy way.
Right.
Either that or Zoom. and
Right.
team tonight. And we've had a lot of success with that so far today. So
Joanne, I think we should move on to question 4 so we have time for exercise 2.
Yeah, we're actually on to exercise 2 now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Was I supposed to advance the slides?
Yeah, it's okay. There are a lot of the same kinds of images. We were just trying to show a range of passive and active spaces.
Yes. Okay.
So if you want to go on to slide 6, Sarah, there's a map of the CBC. And one of the things we wanted to do was to ask you where your favorite buildings are. And this is not in terms of the use. We're gonna ask a question about that. But what are your favorite buildings in terms of the architecture? Something you like about how it functions or how it looks? Let's start there.
I think then that Curran Square in Old McLean Village that the Georgeless family did are quite nice.
Bless you.
I like the
April
Salona.
Georgeless.
I like the Salona Village Shopping Center.
Yeah.
It's very kind of retro, and
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's low and, you know, local shops, and it's a really pleasant place to just walk along, and, you know, the McLean family restaurant. I love it.
Yeah, I like the strip centers too.
I like the old firehouse building because it has a lot of character, and I like how we preserve like that sort of like history, even with the redevelopment going on.
One over there.
I like the Palladium and the little fountain out in front.
Yes.
And Star Nuts there. I think that's quite attractive.
I have not eaten yet at Star Nuts, but everybody keeps telling me it's
a great little spot.
It's a great little spot. You can sit outside in the summertime, and it's quite pleasant. And they've got the fountain out there with some permanent benches that you can sit on, and it's quite pleasant.
Yeah. Did I not capture the Georgeless building? Which I'm missing? Which one is that?
I'll write them in.
Okay.
Was that the Kern Street? Georgeless? Which is the Georgeless building?
They're very human scale, but very functional, and they've been popular with people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of buildings like that in McLean that people sort of just pass by. In a sense, that's good because, you know, they're unique. There's very unique things.
I also really like the Langley Shopping Center as it is now. I love that you can park there. I love that it's full of small businesses and many that have been there for a long time. And it really, really serves the community.
Okay.
Right. That's where I do all my shopping. All my gift shopping is done in the Artisans.
Yep. Which is closing, unfortunately.
Mesmeralda's. Smiths of Bermuda used to be one place. So they're just all these really unique places that you can't find at Tyson's Corner, and you know, you can't go and shop and feel things online, you know, and it's really a tragedy if these small shops go away after decades. Really, they've been here so long. Did you say Artisans is closing?
Yeah, if you haven't already. Yeah, that's been in the local news. They're retiring, but I think a lot of it is just the pressure of what's going on around here.
Joanne, one of the differences.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
One of the differences in the shopping centers that we've mentioned is that whether they do or don't have what I would call an arcade, right? So when you're by the Total Beverage, or you're by the existing Giant, or you're by Salona Village, they've got about, I'm going to guess, 10 feet for an arcade that you can walk between the shops.
Yes.
Whereas Langley Shopping Center, which I do like local tenants, doesn't have that. So I think the arcade is a positive.
Yeah. I've noticed that McLean has quite a bit of arcades compared to a lot of our other areas. And that really does help the businesses sort of put a big face on the street and, make their presence known. And
And then you can also have signage in between the tenants when you're walking along, kind of like an arcade, so now the signage can go the other direction.
What is an arcade? I'm not familiar with how you're using that term.
Covered walkway, which is in front of the shop, but the extends out. So even when you're at the CVS, when you come out of the shop, you're covered and you can have benches there.
Oh, right. Are you saying, and Langley does or does not have that?
Does not.
Okay.
Let's go on to this next question, which is about gateways. So mostly at the edges, but it can also be in the center. Where would you see? Where do you think are the gateways that would, in a perfect world, you would at that moment you would know, okay, I'm really entering into McLean.
Is Carol on here? Carol Herrick? It always has been the corner of Chain Bridge and Old Dominion.
Yeah.
Historically,
and that's
the heart of McLean.
Yeah, it's funny that you say. Are you talking about like coming in on the Salon in front of the Salona Village Shopping Center?
Well,
that's Old Chain Bridge.
It's where.
Oh, right there. Okay, but that's not a gateway. That's like you're in the center. That's the center. Gateway. I think. Are we asking kind of like when do you know you've entered it?
Well, I think we can interpret it as really both. When you've entered, but also when you've arrived, right? And I think that cross section is that.
I would agree that cross section is when you have arrived. That's definitely it. But I would also say a gateway would be, you have the icon up there at Old Chain Bridge in 123, the entrance to Salona Village Shopping Center. That would be
Over
one.
Here.
Yeah, over there. And then another one would be Old Dominion and Dolly Madison.
And I also saw in the comments Westmoreland, Dolly Madison. Yeah, right here, right by the McLean Central Park.
And the other one I would put like right in front of Balducci's.
Anyone disagree with these thoughts? Other ones? Okay.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. The gateway to McLean, and this is in the past, was at Elm Street, Old Dominion, and Cambridge Road, that triangle there. And that was where McLean began. And that was the gateway. That doesn't mean it's the gateway today. But that was McLean. And where the PNC building was the landmark for McLean, which was the Laughlin House. But that was your gateway until recently. I hear up on Dolly Madison and Chainbridge Road, where you go by Salona is really when you start entering McLean and you're on Dolly Madison Boulevard. Because they will develop that property in front of Salona. And then you will be entering McLean from Dolly Madison.
So right where it's Old Cambridge, right? Meets Dolly Madison?
No, it's where the other Chain Bridge. Old Chain Bridge. Old Chain Bridge is the Wells Fargo Bank, I think, is on the corner. Where in front of what was the Giant is Chain Bridge, and I think that's what you were talking about for the gateway. And I'm just saying that a little further down toward Washington on Dolly Madison in front of Salona, that
gotcha.
Property will be developed, and that will be you will be entering McLean when you go by there.
Gotcha.
But that's down the road.
Yep.
You may also want to have an entry point on Bronner where you come in by Franklin Sherman.
I'm not sure where that is.
Well, I'm pretty aware of where that is because that enters my neighborhood. I would not call that a gateway. That is very much a residential area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I I think there's a lot of concern about having that area be too built up. A lot of concern. There are residential houses right there.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that these gateways are not necessarily areas where we would be promoting new development. I probably should have clarified that. It could be simply a physical marker or something that just, something about the character of the architecture changes.
Well, and it would depend on how it changes.
Yeah.
So, what was proposed were 12-story buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's what people have in mind when they talk about the gateway to McLean. And that's where they were talking about 12-story buildings. So fortunately, I think maybe that's not in the mix now, but
yeah,
there are some strong feelings about that.
Okay.
And it's right across the street from an elementary school where most of our kids went.
If Carol is still on, I'd like to know what she thinks about relocating the heart of McLean to the intersection of Beverly and Elm.
I don't really have an opinion on that.
No.
I mean, just because McLean started where it did, that's where it started. But I think the plan calls for all the development to be on Beverly and Elm. So I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Do you think people will actually go there though? It seems like that it's always been Chain Bridge is really where all the development happens. Everybody.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're building this place on Beverly and Elm that, we'll have this place with all these tall buildings there, but will people go there? That's one of the questions I was asking about that Signage Plaza up there now, that people really aren't going there. It's sort of like an empty plaza. And I'm wondering, just, since we're talking in this breakout room, like, is this really, and that's where this whole CBC plan is going. Are we still going to end up with Chain Bridge as our main street, basically? Because historically it's been our main street. Or do you think people will actually shift up to Beverly and Elm?
I hadn't thought of it quite like that. That's a good point. Let me mull that around in my mind. I think you have a good point here. Thank you.
One idea, I think, that the comprehensive plan was trying with encouraging development in that area, and then we should move on because we have just a few minutes left to answer 2 more questions. But is that by incorporating a mix of residential and commercial, that you have more residents to use those kinds of spaces on the weekends and other times, that it's not just people coming there for their doctor's appointment and that sort of thing. So it's try to diversify the people who are there.
This is Brian. I was pretty involved in this, and Beverly has a potential to become a pretty pedestrian-friendly street, and it would remove residents from Chain Bridge to some extent, walking, biking. So creating a little separation there in terms of people and density, and Elm Street could be redeveloped over time, kind of block by block, half block by half block, taking down some of the old 3, 4, 5-story office buildings. And it would still feel pretty walkable. I still think, look, the main intersection is still Chain Bridge and Old Dominion. We're not going to change that over the next 50 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful context. Let's go on to our last 2 questions, and I think we're still, ponder some of these thoughts as we answer these last 2. So, because we've been talking so much about these interesting businesses that McLean has, and the kinds of local hangouts and this community feel, where would you say are some nooks, some really interesting moments in McLean that you'd want to try to replicate or build upon? I see star nuts. Let me put a marker there.
I'm thinking of that Pocket Park over by the McLean Baptist Church.
Yes.
On Chain Bridge Road.
No, but nobody goes there anymore. It's always empty. Or maybe at church people use, the people at that church use it, but it's not a place to gather for people that live nearby. Like nobody would think about meeting there.
Yeah.
But people go to Starnut or Starbucks or Greenberries is another place that people go to.
Yep.
To meet. And Salona Village Shopping Center.
Okay.
Greenberries is closing too with the giant redevelopment.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, maybe they'll come back.
I do like the Signet Park. If we had a few retailers by it, imagine if you had the Greenberries immediately next to the Signet Park and maybe some sandwich shop or a restaurant, so you could be using it in the morning, at noon, at night.
Yeah. It's an interesting point because until Starnut, I don't remember people going to that location. And if you create a restaurant opportunity, then suddenly you have a Nook.
Yeah. Any other ones?
We have gathering spots, but they're not really outdoors because, it's not conducive to being outdoors, basically.
That's okay. What are those?
We don't have patio. Well, McLean family, is another part of McLean. You see everybody in there.
Yep, definitely.
Where is
that is
McLean
Salona
family.
Village. Yeah,
In
Salona Village Shopping Center. It's a great gathering spot.
Yeah. Other places were Pulcinella. Now Pulcinella's been split, but they had banquet rooms in the basement. They had opera going on there. No outdoor spaces, but Kazan is an old institution that we have here. Now they've been doing more outdoor restaurant dining lately, but that one's going to go too with the giant redevelopment.
So the Langley Shopping Center has several Nooks. I mean, they used to have, the Three Pigs Barbecue. That was like a total Nook. And then there's I'm drawing a blank on the name of the Italian restaurant, but there's always been one or two kind of gathering spot Nooks within the Langley Shopping Center. I'm sure those will be gone with the new 12-story street front building that's going to go there.
I mean, I feel like you can have both. I think the Italian place you're referring to is Del Grano. Del Grano's.
Yeah, Del Grano's. Yep.
Yeah, I love going there. I hate to say this. I really, really hate to say this. The McDonald's, because of the fact that I really hate to say it's Sweetleaf. It's the one that people go to when they skip class. Is Sweetleaf.
Oh yeah,
and
Sweetleaf.
the McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
And Sweetleaf is great, but I think McDonald's also because the location is very good. You're close to Dwight Madison, but you're not actually on it, which I think adds a sense of separateness, which is also why I think the Elm Street and Beverly Road is actually really good because it keeps people away from business that is Chain Road and keeps it safer. But yeah, hate to promote large corporations instead of small places like DeGrano's, which is much better. But yeah, McDonald's.
I totally agree with that. The Sweetleaf is a great gathering spot and it's hugely popular. And if you don't know where that is, it's just north of Franklin Sherman Elementary School. Yeah, it's up there in that tiny little nook there. And the McDonald's, and there used to be a McDonald's right at the corner of, right in the heart of McLean. And that place was unbelievably popular. It's now a, nursery.
The nursery,
thing.
yeah.
But that's
a gathering spot too, the nursery.
Oh my gosh.
I meet people over there all the time.
That's right. It is. It doesn't have to be a restaurant, right?
Santini's is pretty popular especially with people who are younger and people who finished playing some kind of sport, junior high kids, high school kids. Good for a sandwich.
Is that over on Old Dominion?
It's in front. It's the outlot in front of McLean Hardware there. It's a local family that some of the family lives in Herndon, some lives in Fairfax. There's a half dozen of them.
And McLean Hardware is also a gathering spot. McLean Hardware, I know everybody in there.
That is true.
That is, that's over. Is that in Langley or?
No, it's the McLean,
McLean
geez, what is that called? Commerce Shopping Center? Yeah, where the
Did I
Total
get-
Wine is.
Oh, Total Wine. Oh, that's down here, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Good place for summer jobs too, which is nice. Again, all these small places, good places for summer jobs, keeps kids doing something.
That's great.
Some money
That's
on
such
the
a great
side.
point. Well, we've been talking about these great businesses, and so I think we've merged these two kinds of questions together, the Nooks and these businesses. So any other businesses that maybe didn't fit these kind of descriptions that you'd like to highlight?
There are so many local businesses in McLean that I would want to highlight. There, you know, the gas stations, Craftsman, it used to be, I can't remember it, McLean Auto, you know, I mean, you name it, the dry cleaners, everything. There's just, I don't have to go to Tyson's, and that's what I love about living here.
Yeah.
It's all right here.
Yeah, that was really sad when the Burns family lost that cleaning business there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a terrific place to go to.
So I think we're getting pulled back into the whole group. So
yes. Oh, sorry, Joanne. I was just gonna say we're closing the other rooms, so
great.
Everyone's about to come together.
Okay.
So everyone, you know, stay put.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah, thank you guys.
If you have other ideas, you can always add them in the chat too as we get going.
Oh.
Hello, everyone. We're coming back together. Joanne, should we get going on the next agenda item?
Yes, thank you. Just giving me 1 second to ended up facilitating a group, and so just sort of getting my bearings a little bit. So, Sarah, if you want to unshare the screen for now.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Forgot.
So I do want to apologize for, wow, the amount of some of the technical challenges, and it was kind of surprising how much that was a challenge. So thank you, Sarah, for weaving our way through that. And in the end, I think we got a lot of good input. So thank you for your patience with that. In this whole group, hopefully it won't be as challenging. Let's see what more information we can glean. So the next step is going to be, we're going to get to this polling while the facilitators are working to summarize some of these ideas. So I am about to open some pictures on the screen, and we're going to ask a series of questions, and you're going to respond again in the chat. It should pop up as a hold on 1 second, as a pop-up on your screen. And if that pop-up is in the way of the images, go ahead and click out of it and just respond in the chat. So they sort of have two different ways to respond. You can use that pop-up, or you can respond in the chat. So Sarah is going to be administering or putting out the poll questions, and I've got hopefully you can see on the screen the images. The first one is of paving materials. Let me scroll down ever so slightly. So there are numbers with each one of these questions, with each one of these images. And we tried to include some of the examples that are currently in McLean. So in a minute, Sarah will get this question posted up.
Can I make a comment about paving materials?
Yeah, do you want to put it in the chat, or is there something you?
I can just say it real quick.
Okay.
Bricks and all those kind of individual pavers, look really attractive when they're first put in. But you know, especially permeable ones, they have a tendency to have the water get soaked in different ways in different places. And very soon you have a very uneven surface with some bricks higher than others. And unless it's carefully maintained, it becomes actually very difficult to walk on, particularly elderly people and stuff like that. So even though it's attractive in the pictures, sometimes a solid, you know, there is permeable concrete. You can get permeable concrete that's flat.
Yeah, Bill, I think we're going to have to, if you have comments, it's really best to put them in the chat going forward, because we'll end up having a lot of discussion that we won't get through all of these. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to keep moving things forward pretty quickly.
That's okay.
Okay. So the first question was, do you want to keep the current pavers in McLean? And Bill summarized his thoughts, but go ahead and include, and if you have a comment about that, as Bill had indicated, please add that to the chat. Then the second question, we only got about 15 people. Are people having problems responding? Okay. So remember the chat tool at the top of the screen? It's the second one over. It's a little round bubble. If you want to, if you open that up, you should see the poll in there. And you may have to scroll back up because people are adding some comments. Does anyone?
Some are saying they're not finding the poll.
Yeah.
Poll not popping up.
So
I will just read the question when I launch it, and then you can respond accordingly in the chat.
Okay.
If it doesn't show up.
And I'm seeing some people do that. So again, if you want to respond in the chat, do you want to keep the current brick pavers in McLean? And in the picture in number 4 is showing that current McLean standard. And then the next question, if you want to respond either in the poll or just in the chat, is which of the 3 of these do you like best? Again, if you want to keep McLean, you can certainly just respond number 4, or you can add 3 others that you like best. Like I like 1, 2, and 3.
When I try to chat, it says you're not a member of the group, you cannot chat.
Ooh, it's weird. Would you mind noting them for me, and I'll capture them from you afterwards? If you just write down which ones you like of each one of these questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is regarding lighting. So similar to the first question is, do you want to keep the current lighting in McLean? The current, we're talking about street lighting predominantly. The images regarding 2 and 3 are the existing lights that are out there. Number 2 is the one that you most see on the big roadways. We took this picture right around the corner of Chainbridge Road in Old Dominion. And then the acorns are in various places, mostly on the smaller local streets. I've seen them around the Lestrades Peninsula and that sort of area. So that's the first question. Do you want to keep the current lights? Yes or no? And then the second question is, just like pavers, choose 3 lights that you would like the best.
Joanne, there seems to be a little delay in the options to vote versus the questions.
Are you seeing now the question that says, which lighting options do you prefer? Choose 3.
No, it says options 1 to 12.
Right. So you choose out of the 12 options that are showing up on the screen, pick 3 of those.
It won't let you. It'll only let you pick 1.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Well, then pick 1. We'll see if we can fix that for the next set.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting good
Very
comments.
frustrating.
I'm sorry about that. Okay. I see things tapering off. I'm gonna go to the next question. So with regard to landscaping, and we had a lot of discussion about that in our small group, at least in the one that I was in. Which of the 12 images here, or I think if you can choose 3, would you like to see in McLean? And then you can see a variety of things, like natives being incorporated, native grasses and shrubs, native trees, and incorporation of stormwater features in the parks, like in number 8. Large shade trees, more formal landscaping, like in number 9, versus more informal, like number 10.
Joanne, can you scroll the picture up just a bit?
Sure. Is that better?
Now I can do this. Let's see. 2, 2, 5, 2, 5, 5, 8, 2, 9.
Still getting a lot of ideas in. Thank you for the comments as well. It's very helpful. Okay. I'm going to scroll down to the next question, which is regarding ground floor frontage. So this is how the buildings meet up with the sidewalk areas to have different kinds of engagement of the buildings to the streetscapes. So the question is, which of these first floor ground building designs resonate with you? You can see things like small little plazas incorporated into office buildings, sort of lots of entrances and small scale signage incorporated, like in number 5. More diverse ground floors, like in number 6, where you've got a mix of landscaping and front doors. Number 7, example in Connecticut Avenue that has a sort of auto court for a residential building.
Again, could you scroll up? I can't see the bottom row at all.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The ground floor, the bottom row shows some example from Kentlands in Maryland, where you have lots of stoops and individual entrances, outdoor dining, of course. Ways to personalize that front area if you've got a little bit of space, like Reston, Virginia, number 11. Okay, going to move on to the next set. Let me try to see if I scroll to the very bottom here. You can see all 12 now. So this is street furnishings. Do you want to keep, first question is just a yes or no. Do you want to keep the current furnishings in McLean, which is the examples in the upper right? So 2 is kind of more on the private side. Those are the ones in front of the Palladium. But 3 and 4 are ones that are more in the public sidewalk areas. And then the follow-up question will be, which of these do you prefer? So be thinking about your top 3 here. Oops. And, you know, if for some reason you don't like any of these, let us know what you might like in terms of a different style. You want something super modern. It's totally different. Okay. The next set of questions is also about street furnishings, but now we're talking about some of the other elements. Hold on a second. The bike racks, the trash cans, you know, all these little elements add up to really create a personal or personalized public realm for McLean. So which of these 3 images resonate with you?
This is bike racks?
Bike racks is on the right-hand side, and on the left is some of the trash cans, recycling bins. Great, getting one. I got a none. Hopefully you're adding a comment about what you'd like to see instead, Mr. Perito. Okay, as we wrap up that, we're going to move on to signage. So this is a mix of both business signage and, you know, public realm signage. So, but the idea is generally, you know, these are signs that hopefully add to the character of place rather than being visual clutter. So some examples that you'll see here is like the Old Town Square entry signage, sort of a gateway sign in the city of Fairfax, or more creative signage that's painted on buildings. We did, of course, include some examples from downtown McLean. So share with us the top 3 signs that you'd like to see. I remember hearing from Paul Kohlenberger how he would like to see wayfinding signs that help really to highlight these local businesses and kind of building, you know, a system that says, you know, you're just a 2-minute walk from Salona Village. You know, the way to sort of help orient people around downtown McLean and help promote the unique local businesses.
I'm good. No. You want something?
It's great. Helpful.
Joanne, I'm seeing a no themes, please. I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Yeah, that would be helpful to, you know, I don't know if it's the number 8 that doesn't resonate with you, Kathleen. I think that was from you.
Yeah, I mean, what is the theme of McLean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what will you end up putting on that? They'll just, you know, they'll sort of make something up and.
So avoiding the kind of kitsch, you know, sort
yeah,
of creating a
I mean,
theme park.
what is the theme of McLean?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's not seeing the place to vote for signs. Let's see the
So
hands.
if you don't see it, then just put the numbers in the chat if you can see the chat.
Why won't my chat work?
It's frustrating, Bill. I'm sorry. But I will be happy to talk to anyone afterwards or collect any sort of written comments after the fact. I want to make sure everybody gets their input in. Okay, I'm going to move on to, I think it's the last one. Yep, we've got 2 boards for this because it's a big part of McLean. The public art. So what we wanted to ask is, again, choose 3 of the kinds of public art that you'd like to see more of in McLean. And we showed a few examples. I'm sure many of you know the funky lights at the Signet, or the fountain at the Palladian, or even you know, some smaller details like interesting motifs around the stormwater facilities that are in the sidewalk areas on the Signet. So those are some examples locally, but I think some of the things that we're seeing in these images are something that's either more functional or incorporated into functional elements, like sculptural rainwater collection, versus pure art that's like the bronze sculpture in number 10. You know, there's or the colorful street furnishings being something more functional versus just fun art on the street. I am going to move on to the next and last board, which is one more public art. So again, you'll see a range of features. One of the things we talked about in our group was a whole lot of, you know, the idea of water as a really engaging feature. But if you can add, which 3 do you like here? And again, feel free to comment on some of the reasons why.
Joanne, scroll up just a titch again.
Sure. Oh, actually, that's as
far as it goes. Oh.
Yeah. It's weird how the Teams is cutting it off for you. Got about an inch of space on my screen. I'll just read the words on 9 through. So on number 9, it's referring to some building architecture, building facade motifs. So things that are really incorporated into the design of buildings. Number 10 is a fountain that also functions as rainwater collection. Number 11 is interactive sculpture, like swings and things that people can actually get in and use. And then this last number 12 is a practical design where the canopy folds up into a sculpture when not in use, depending on the type of weather and climate at the time.
Look at number 2.
Lewis, that's a funny comment.
Thanks, but I'm actually serious about things like that. Whether there's something about McLean that is different from everywhere else, and then just highlight that in our public art. And we've got Dolly Madison, you know,
right,
overnighting after fleeing the Capitol and so forth, and other things.
Yeah, it's true.
Wait, I think about it a little. What's the connection between McLean and M&M's? I never heard about it.
Mars Candy is headquartered here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right nearby the McDonald's. Carol Herrick could go into depth about all the different ways we could highlight unique parts of McLean.
That's cool. I guess learn something new every day.
So we are approaching the end of our visual preference polling. Any other final comments, please add them. It's very, very, very helpful. I believe people are still wrapping up their group summaries. I hear some chatter in the background.
Maggie Law has her hand up. I don't know.
Maggie, did you want to share something? You're on mute.
Well, I couldn't see the things to fill out at the time that you were talking. I saw it later, so I got a little confused.
Okay.
But there's many nice things that are good here. I want to stress the need for more greenery in our public spaces and how we need native plants and trees.
Thank you. That's a great comment. And what I'll do is, since this went pretty fast, and if people didn't see them, we'll go ahead and post this, and we'll send a link to everyone who is participating here. And we can, if you have a few minutes to run through it on your own and you want to send me those comments outside of this meeting time, I'd be happy to accept that. So we'll go ahead and post this online for you to take a peruse at if you want to do that after the fact. Okay, if people don't mind, I need a 1 minute break. Maybe some other people do too. So actually, let's give it 3 minutes and we'll come back and we'll get all of our facilitators in to do a readout, if that's all right. So thank you. Hold on. Really do appreciate the additional comments that are coming in. All of that's very helpful to provide context to some of the, you know, when you just to supplement the numbers. So let me bring back the presentation now. So we are going to roll through some of these summaries. We're going to run in order of the group, and well, we'll do the group that I was part of at the end of this. So we won't forget about that group. So anyway, Susie, are you ready Susie and Lauren, to give your summary?
Yes, I think just about.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Thanks. So on the first part of the exercise, just some kind of common themes that came out in terms of ideas for the streets and things that the group liked. Outdoor dining was a popular response, as was trees and tree canopy, and also having a balance so that it wasn't skewed, you know, all one type of use or another type of use, but really having a good balance of kind of active and passive and different types of uses at the street level. The group liked the kind of a small scale feel. So in terms of the businesses, kind of really like the local feel, not big box, and kind of areas that weren't too noisy. So thinking about the kind of quality of the noise level. And there were also some discussions about the kind of space or the space created between the vehicle space, so the curb space and where the pedestrians are, and making that space larger to have more of a buffer to, and included in that would be the concept of wider landscape panels. So a space that could really accommodate trees, kind of going along with the theme of the group. Also really liked human scale places and including a variety of different types of gathering spaces, both active and passive. It was pretty split vote for the group. So in terms of changes that we discussed, one of the major themes was the improved kind of mobility network across the area. And so in terms of that, like keeping shrubs low and kind of controlled so they're not encroaching into the sidewalk. The use of brick, but making sure that it was kept evenly so that it wasn't kind of jutting up. And also, you know, again, the kind of looking at increasing that separation through a wider landscape panel that could accommodate trees. So in terms of amenities that we discussed, seasonal activities were mentioned, and also having space for the arts, both kind of more formalized amphitheater space that could be programmed, and then also kind of opportunities for more passive use by the community, so the community could just come and you know, make use of that space. We also talked a bit about kind of more kind of small footprint type of recreational uses like built-in game boards or bocce, and then that could kind of complement outdoor seating and more passive seating areas. And another kind of theme that came out from the group was the idea of having space that is active both day and night, and a space that's designed for use kind of, you know, kind of a 24/7 space, so that it wasn't just an afterthought. So things like lighting and how the space is oriented for safety and things like that was another common theme of the group for exercise 1. So for just quickly on to exercise 2. So some of the common themes, the Palladium had the most votes in terms of the favorite architecture. And the theme was that brick was really the materiality that the group preferred, and really preferred smaller scale shopping centers that really resonated with the group. So in terms of the gateways, when we're looking at the map and trying to do an analysis, they were kind of spread out in almost like 2 rings. There were a lot that were further out at kind of what you might consider like a more traditional gateway at like road crossings or kind of those kind of major, you know, kind of main streets that kind of bring you into the CBC. But there's also notably a few at major locations within the CBC. So I was interested to kind of learn more about that and kind of some of the thought going into that. So perhaps that's something for a follow-up. In terms of Nooks, notably, most of them were parks and civic spaces. McLean Community Center, Dolly Madison Library were mentioned. The group also mentioned that there weren't that many, but the ones that were mentioned were spacious and had a very like a casual feel to them. So they're very inviting.
Great.
And in terms of question 4 about attractive businesses, I won't name them all, there's so many, but the general theme was that there's a lot of really good, unique businesses that serve a variety of shopping, dining needs of the local residents. And if you look at the map graphically, it's really spread out all across the CBC.
Okay.
But you'll note a lack of gathering spaces in between all those awesome businesses. So it's really noting like there's not really a central gathering space or too many nooks kind of within the CBC. There's not really like a glue that can kind of serve as that space to hold everything together or provide a variety of smaller nooks that would help kind of support the activity that people are coming to enjoy within the CBC. So I hope that was quick enough.
Susie.
And I hope I
that's
captured
great.
everyone's ideas accurately.
Well, and what I'm going to ask the rest of the facilitators to do is to do your best to try to not repeat or to offer in unique additions to those, because I think we're going to hear a lot of similar themes. So of course you can touch on that or say, you know, we're building on that, but let's see what other ideas come about too. So Laura, I think you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Baker. I was with Group 2, who were all great sports while we tried to figure out the technology. And I will do my best to try to encapsulate some of the things that they said. But, you know, honestly, Joanne, there were quite a few things that were similar to what Susie's group talked about in terms of things that they liked about the streets. They definitely, like the pavers, for example, the brick pavers that are already existing in McLean. They certainly thought that they looked nice, but of course they also have concerns about how they can be difficult to walk on sometimes. They can catch shoes and heels and they can be uneven. So that's definitely something to keep in mind in terms of access for people, as well as, needing to be aware of maintenance. They talked a lot about images which were showing, trees and shrubs. That was really, really important to the group, making sure that there's enough space to grow healthy trees and that there's definitely a priority put on getting greenery and landscaping into the street. Kind of related to that in terms of changes that they wanted to see in McLean, obviously trying to make it much more pedestrian friendly, wanting to see McLean use as many native species plants as possible, but they need to be durable, adding greenery, having broader sidewalks, more amenities for people to enjoy while transversing McLean. That was really important to them. And we talked a little bit about passive and active spaces, and they're, when we were talking about the public spaces, wanting to see more amenities like, I think it was put best by shade and seating. Any type of public spaces should make sure that those two things are emphasized, making sure that there's native species again and greenery incorporated throughout, but also more importantly, needing to have a reason to go to a park. So making sure that there are things to do around it, whether that's restaurants or coffee shops or an interesting, unique type of destination. We talked about, some features, like for example, there was an interest in a water feature, and that could certainly be attractive to kids. But the group wanted to see how open spaces could appeal to people of all ages, but there was also kind of a asterisk next to that, which was, but still making sure that the spaces were more geared towards the adults of McLean versus kids, because there's already a lot of really great kid parks in the area. So having features that are appealing and could be usable for different age groups is important, but not an overemphasis perhaps on kids. In terms of the exercise too, when we were looking at favorite buildings and gateways, also, the Palladium building and Signet were definitely mentioned as examples of great architecture, being elegant. Gateways were talked about in various locations on Dolly Madison near McLean Central Park, as well as Chain Bridge Road near Westmoreland Street. Old Dominion Drive near the McLean Square Shopping Center, and also on Dolly Madison Boulevard near Salona Village Shopping Center. There's like a little V there that people were talking about.
Definitely.
And then finally, Nooks, and our discussion got a little bit compressed towards the end, so we didn't get to fully explore, but folks were also saying that there really aren't a ton of Nooks. But they would certainly like to see more. One place that came up was Greenberries, and would definitely like to put the little park near the Palladium building was one. And then one area near Franklin Elementary School, Sherman Elementary School. Unfortunately, I didn't get the name of it, but I will follow up with my group to make sure I get it written down correctly. And great businesses included things like McLean Hardware, Family Hardware, McLean Family Dining, Tea Shop, Rocco's, and they just said, it meets our needs for this community. That's really important, and they're unique. So that's our group.
That's great, Laura. Thank you. I heard a lot of similarities in our group as well. So I think we're getting a lot of consensus on some of these elements. So who do we have next? It is up to Anna.
So, hey everyone, I'm Anna Riffel.
Are you muted, Anna? Can't hear you.
I'm not muted.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. That was me. My bad.
Okay. I'm Anna Ricklin. I'm with the health department. I had Kinda Mines as our note taker and co-facilitator from neighborhood and community services. We had group 3. We had a handful of folks who were able to stay in our group. So really happy to facilitate an interesting conversation. From exercise 1, folks really liked some of the coziness and low-rise elements from Old Town, although they would like to see wider sidewalks, as well as some of that larger plaza space where more activity can occur. But there was a concern that they weren't sure if that kind of thing could fit in McLean, given the space constraints. So thinking about that, they also did want to cultivate public space where people can come play with kids, sit on the grass, possibly a water feature, but that seating was really an important value that many people in our group repeated. Having enough seating, whether it be in grassy areas or benches, was really important. And someone mentioned having a splash park for kids, so it was great to see that in the images there in our last activity. But at the same time, there was a general sense of keeping things practical. So when it comes to the streetscape, the kinds of trees you have, thinking about parking, keeping that practicality that we have today in McLean. When it came to the mapping exercise, there was a handful of favorite buildings. They're marked on the map. I won't go through them to repeat what folks have already said, but the favoriteness of them was mainly due to their functionality today, not necessarily because of beautiful architecture or beautiful design. There was a feeling in the group that there did need to be something more attractive about a lot of the design of the buildings in McLean. And there wasn't really an interest in having gateways. There was more of an interest in having kind of a gradual transition from the residential areas into that central business area. They wanted to see more nooks, more places to have that, to sit outside, etc. There were a handful of them mentioned, but a desire for more. They really liked the diverse restaurants with international cuisine. And again, the practical destinations like the hardware store, a shoe store, a paint store, etc. Those kinds of places to come. And someone in our group said, we may want to focus on what people want to do and not as much on what they want to see as a way to kind of guide what we build as we move forward. And that's it.
That's a very interesting summarizing comment there. What to do in McLean, what's going to bring people in rather than just visually. So that's important. Okay, thanks, Anna. That's great. Chris, you're up.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chris Caperton with the Department of Planning and Development, and Sophia Fisher from same department was our note taker. Our group was small. I'm going to leave it at that. So we didn't have to suspend judgment as much as you other groups had to. I'll run through the comments and try not to repeat anything that's been said before. But in terms of the street images, those images that showed the repurposed parking area and the Apollo, Washington, D.C. Image were two of the more appealing ones, appealing strategies where you see a good balance and scale of pedestrian outdoor activities and even parking if that's needed. In terms of what would you change about McLean streets, we thought it was feedback was that it's good to see sidewalks, but we want to make sure that the green zone is on the street side and sidewalks are closer to the building. These sidewalks that are exposed right up to the street edge, a little bit more problematic sometimes. In terms of the amenities or attractions that would draw in the public, it was part, what won't work and what will work. And I think two of the best examples are side by side in the images. The small park with water feature that's in New York kind of belies the fact that it's an incredibly dense, heavily populated area that would make use of a pocket park like that and even have the capacity to build something like that. But if you look at the formal town square, the Bentonville, Arkansas image, that certainly has an appeal because it's a central hub. It's something that McLean does not have, and it would be a good focal point for gathering and community interest. In terms of the more active or passive question, I think that the comment or the feedback was primarily that, if I can paraphrase, quality is more important than quantity. So more active public spaces or less of this or that is kind of relative to the quality that you're getting and the thoughtfulness that goes behind placing public amenities in the right place, where you have a critical mass of people, destination themes that get people to these places, or just enhance their value in the experience. So that's kind of it for exercise 1. And then in terms of favorite buildings, the Signet building, 1980s building architecture style was mentioned as a standout building. And the gateways were pretty much where you would expect them to be, along Dolly Madison, either end as you're coming into the McLean area, and then Chain Bridge and Old Dominion, of course, sort of a key gateway. Piggybacking on Anna's comment, I think there was feedback also that sort of these transition areas are kind of what are unique to McLean, or you don't have sort of formal gateway feelings, but you have these transition areas from business, from retail into the community, into the residential areas and green spaces. In terms of Nooks and businesses, the Greenbrier Coffee Tea Place was mentioned, as well as the McLean Central Park. But there's also a comment that in many ways, McLean is all about transitioning from point A to point B, and there aren't enough reasons to stop or to find places of public congregation, that work. So these small businesses, these nooks where community meets are important, and they do exist in McLean. The comment was also made that the houses, but really homes of McLean are really the heartbeat. A lot of social activity occurs in homes, and that's not a bad thing, but it's causes a bit of a dispersion of the population, so you don't have maybe the ability to congregate in large areas if those don't exist. So that's about it. I think that's a summary. Hopefully I made my 2 minutes. Thanks.
That was great, Chris. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're on to David. Hey, David.
Hey, Joanne, thanks. I'm David Stenson with the Department of Planning and Development, and Megan Van Dam, also of the Department of Planning and Development, helped facilitate as well and take notes. So for the exercise 1 participants, they like spaces that allow you to sit outside and are good for people watching. They also like streetscapes with parking that allowed for the convenience of driving up to neighborhood businesses. Of the examples of streetscapes in exercise 1, they liked King Street in Alexandria, and they also liked the example with the streetscape and bioretention in DC. And for changes, the participants would like pavers throughout the CBC to have a consistent look. I would like to see more sidewalks, such as Elm Street. They did not like the sidewalks on Ingleside Avenue or Old Cambridge Road, that example. The group also said they like the sidewalks with landscape panels, but in areas that are constrained for space, the priority should be given to a larger walkway over a landscape panel. The group also liked water features, but was curious about unintended consequences, such as if the sound of water features could make it difficult for people to sit and carry on conversations. The group preferred passive uses for the most part, as they said the McLean area has access to parks and athletic fields that are outside the CBC, and they thought the CBC could use more spaces with dining and shopping as well. For amenities, the groups liked the public space at the Palladium. They did like this water feature at the Palladium, and they liked the fact that there's a coffee shop. The group would like more public spaces that are adjacent to buildings with active ground floor uses or commercial activity. So for the first map exercise for the buildings, the favorite buildings of the group were the Palladium and the Signet. They did mention also that some of the shopping centers in the McLean CBC seemed a little run down. For the gateway exercise, the group thought that new gateway should be located at Dolly Madison and Old Dominion near Jay Gilbert's, as well as Dolly Madison and Chain Bridge Road near the Salona Village Shopping Center. They also thought another place for the gateway would be at Old Dominion Drive and Holmes Place near the McLean Square Shopping Center. So for the next question on the map exercise, the group likes the Greenberry Coffee Shop, McLean Family Restaurants, as well as the Teen Center at the old firehouse. The group thought that there are not enough places to gather in the McLean CBC and would like to see more of that in the future. And for the final map exercise regarding the businesses, the group thought the businesses that attracted the community to the McLean CBC were the McLean Family Restaurant, McLean Hardware, Mesmeralda's, and Giant Food. They seem to like the fact that the McLean CBC has restaurants and places to buy everyday items. And I think that summarizes the group's thoughts, which is similar to the others.
That's a very good last summary there, David. Restaurants and places to buy everyday items. I think I've heard that quite a lot tonight. That's great. Joe's up next.
Yes, thank you very much. And I was joined today by Denise Dressel. We had a small but mighty group. We had Nate and Allison Stratton and Bob Perito. My group, looking at the street images, I think something that resonated with them was really places for people to be. They wanted those sidewalks to be walkable. That resonated. Wide sidewalks. They saw the images with the people, places to congregate, outside restaurant seating. That was all important. In terms of some of the changes, I think room to pass on those sidewalks, that was pretty important because, you don't want to be uncomfortable bumping into people as you're walking around the town. A dog park would be a nice change for people. And these things don't have to be huge. A way to cross over Dolly Madison to get to the McLean Central Park, that was very important. And when you do have these features and whatnot, the sculptures as an example, it would be nice to have some green space around them to really kind of frame and help enclose and be a foreground or a background or whatever it might be. I think there was a move to have both passive and active spaces. You have to think about maybe the town center should lean one way or another. But really that you should think about that. I think our notes say passive in the middle. I'm not sure if I caught that right or not. Some of the amenities has been related already. Seating, absolutely critical. Green spaces, they don't have to be huge, but remember the scale. You don't have to have a huge lawn and a big wide open spaces in McLean. Obviously you wouldn't, but think about the scale and make it usable if you're going to have those green spaces. And that can be very close to people and small in scale, but yet still be very important to the community. Shade is critical. I think the trees in the planting area would be good for that. But again, areas to congregate, seasonal decorations, performance spaces, those were all important. In terms of some of the buildings, some of the random comments or not random, but some of the comments that maybe not have been mentioned already is need a new community center rather than the current one. Some of the buildings, the PNC Bank was mentioned as a feature, the Signet building, Star Nuts as a place for the community to go. I think overall, in terms of Nooks and such, there aren't necessarily a lot of good community hangouts yet. We'd like to be able to hang out to some of these places, and it's one of the shortcomings. So places for people to sit and linger for a while. In terms of the gateways, I'll finish with that. There are a few of them. Regardless, they should be clearly marked and well maintained. Old Dominion, both ends of it by Dolly Madison, Chain Bridge, and then at the southern end would be critical. So a lot of good ideas.
Thanks, Joe. That's very helpful. We are seeing a lot of consensus around both the businesses and some of the experiences. Let's see, who is next? We have Bob. Bob, where are you? Here we
Bob
are.
is here. I would like to do a quick intro
Bob Pecora, FCDOT, and I work with Zach Larnard, who's also with FCDOT. And we'd like to do a quick screen share so we have some good ideas that our group put together.
Sure.
And I'm going to take over your screen, Joanne. Thank you for that. And let's see if I can do this really quickly here. So I'd like to do a shout out to Camille, Tina, and Chris for helping us out with the ideas and the board going through the exercises. So we've heard a lot of the comments that the other groups have made. So I'm just going to touch on, here's the list that we came up with for both exercises. And, we heard about the wide sidewalks and trees and all that, but they also maybe add the small town feel as the likes, the butterfly friendly plants for stormwater management in the bioretention areas. That's something new. They did like the brick design work that the McLean signature sidewalk is for, so maybe more of those as say for changes. Bike lanes, we didn't hear mention of that yet. And then also marked crosswalks on the streets with the intersections that have that. And we talked about like the Signet Park or the park that's outside of the Palladium where Star Nuts is, and looking at a coffee shop type atmosphere. So if you have a coffee shop next to one of the parks, you can actually create public space that has active space that way. Unique and attractive seating areas, or anything that has public art, or if there's outdoor exercise or yoga spaces. And then we also talked about like evening events, like Mosaic has movies or movie nights in the park or something like that, or Mosaic, National Harbor, Rehoboth Beach came up in our discussions. So those were good ideas for that. We had 2 votes for active spaces and 1 for an even split. So it's just like, active and passive would work well here in our group. And as the and then exercise 2 for the gateways, we heard these in the other groups here. Dolly Madison is the main thoroughfare on the northern edge of the CBC. So the intersections with Ingleside, Chambers Road, and at Dolly Madison. I put Dolly Madison twice. Anyway, it's at Old Dominion. That's what I meant to say. So Old Dominion and Dolly Madison, and then the Southeast Gateway at out of Old Dominion. Better access to the McLean Central Park and the library space. Trying to reduce car trips in the CBC. Favorite buildings, again, we mentioned J. Gilbert's, the Signet Palladium, and shopping at Balducci's Giant, the McLean Shopping Center. We got to talk about restaurants, so some of the favorite restaurants that they liked, and it's like Zach and I got a list of good restaurants to go visit next time we're there. Saracosia, Santini's, Madison Deli, and then the Thai and Middle Eastern restaurant. So that's something that's good that we like to have, that our group would like to see a little bit more of. So variety. Or things that are favorites to the community that people would like to go to, is like retain those, but also entertain new ideas for all that. So we appreciate that. And again, thanks again to Camille, Tina, and Chris. Thank you for bearing with us with the technical challenges at the beginning, but we got through it. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Bob.
And
yeah, there's
Zach,
a lot of
you.
Thai and Middle Eastern restaurants, some fantastic ones in McLean that I drive a little distance to get to.
Yep, exactly. Thank you.
So we've got Doug Tipsword.
Hello all. My name is Doug Tipsword. I'm at the Park Authority. I'm a landscape architect in their planning and development division. I just wanted to thank Liz Hagg for being my note taker, and Taki and Sharon for their great input. As the last breakout group, Breakout 9, it's kind of hard to offer too many unique things that haven't already been mentioned, but I do have a summary that I think is a pretty strong summary of what our group's takeaways were. In general, our group favored adequate room for on the streets, provided adequate room for mature trees and green panels. They liked the images that showed activated plazas and social spaces. Those were very well received. The general sentiment on materials was that the brick is nice for paving, but it does offer challenges and maintenance and ADA accessibility challenges as well. Regarding the existing conditions of McLean streets, the group felt that wider sidewalks or sidewalks on each side of the street were definitely preferable, and wider planting strips as well. There's mention of better crosswalks and traffic calming measures were desired, and bike lanes and more bike parking was requested. Regarding amenities and attractions, the large green areas were seen as preferences for various events, large events. Park areas with kid-friendly activities and pet-friendly activities were requested. Large mature trees and water elements. And then regarding the passive and active spaces, a balanced approach was really the preference. Regarding the mapping exercises, it's a lot of the same that everybody else has sort of mentioned. Favorite buildings and spaces included the Signet, the Palladium, Salona Village, McLean Hardware, McLean Family Restaurant. Two unique favorite buildings that I hadn't heard yet were the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church. Those were mentioned.
No, that's good, important points, Doug. Well, thank you. That's great. I appreciate all that. I think that the churches are definitely something, we heard that as well, and that some of the public spaces around them are really valuable. So the last group is Doug Loescher.
Okay.
And then I ended up also being with the group, so I just want to make a few comments there. So go ahead, Doug.
Okay, great. So in the interest of time, we can really just talk a couple of things that stood out a bit for our group. We also had a very small group. I think one of the things that, in terms of amenities, that was mentioned, similarly places to eat lunch, but having a place you can eat lunch that's close to where lunch and food is actually sold or served. Places to engage kids. And to that end, the idea of public art that could be maybe not permanent, but more temporary or pop-up installations. And a couple of examples that were mentioned is Old Town Waterfront had temporary exhibits that are very engaging for kids and for young adults, and things such as the Bird's Nest at Preston Town Center. We had a very small group. There was more interest in active amenities. Again, programmed for different things, perhaps music and pop-up activities. And then in terms of the one different thing mentioned in our group in terms of favorite buildings was this one that is a white building on Fleetwood. It is maybe not currently used, but it looks like a cool space that could be adaptively reused. We had similar gateway recommendations, similar nooks that were mentioned, and then favorites such as Child's Play and Organic Butcher and just about everything in Langley Shopping Center because it feels like old McLean. So those are a couple of the highlights from our group that was different from other groups.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Fantastic. I also want to just share, I didn't have the opportunity to summarize this, but we had a pretty robust group with quite a lot of discussion. We had the people who couldn't make it into a room for some reason. So I'll just summarize a few of the things that we heard, which is that the idea of third places. This is a concept that you hear about, maybe that you have your home, you have your work, and then what's that third place? Traditionally, it would be the men going to the bar after work. But what are those kinds of places in McLean that really bring somebody there as a choice that they want to go and have a hangout? I had some young people in our group that wanted to see more places for high schoolers to go afterwards. They said, we go to Chipotle and, but not particularly healthy places. And so having more outdoor spaces that you could go to after school would be great. The need for really organizing the infrastructure so that it's not in the way of the sidewalks is important. That the concern about whether it being meters for parking, which people did not want to see, but as well as things like utility poles and things that really get in the way of using the sidewalk, especially for cyclists. There's a lot of concern about cyclists being in mixing with pedestrians in the sidewalk area. In terms of changes that we wanted to see, a lot more native species and the use of native trees and landscaping as part of that. We heard, I would say, a divergence from using the brick, that it's not particularly accessible and that it has a lot of maintenance challenges. So I would say there wasn't as much support for that. Let's see, incorporating stormwater, heard a little bit about that. We really heard a lot about the water features. Like to see more water features in McLean, that this is something that can really draw people in, as well as a sort of sustainable natural landscaping. This bioretention area and the one on the upper left in Melbourne were really highlights that this kind of natural experience in downtown McLean, greening it up, we heard a lot of. Also the idea of more fixed furnishings rather than movable, because it's more manageable from a maintenance standpoint. That I would say we heard more passive green space, passive activities than active. And then this is our map of our gateways. Really started at the center and saying that the intersection of Old Dominion and Cambridge was definitely the sort of, that's when you know you've arrived in McLean. And so building that up in some way in terms of the sense of place around that intersection is important. But we heard a lot of the same locations, and particularly the idea of the smaller scale strip shopping centers, that there's a lot of value in those, and not just the businesses, but the convenience factor with those is important. In terms of, we actually identified a ton of nooks, which maybe was a little bit different than some of the other areas. And some of them we might say were indoors, but a lot of them were these just, unique restaurants that might have a little bit of outdoor dining, that, the idea we could expand on those. So that was our sort of concentration of that. I think that's it. So let me exit out of there. So really, I want to give the floor back. Supervisor Faust, I don't know if you want to have any last closing words, but I just want to also mention that in terms of the next steps, we're going to go ahead and summarize all of this. And as I said, we'll post some of these exercises online and let you know that they're there, so that if you didn't have a chance to comment on some of this, you certainly can. And then once we've collected all of that information, we're going to share it robustly with the advisory group and really download all of this and see where to take it in terms of the recommendations. Later in the summer or early fall, we'll have a draft set of the guidelines that'll come out, and we'll be looking for lots of input back from you all. We'll be going to community groups and have some kind of follow-up community meetings that so take all of this input, turn it into some guidance, and these guidelines show example pictures and things, and then really look for your feedback and have we captured the essence of your ideas. And we'll do all of that before we wrap up a final draft. So that's our big picture summary of the community engagement, but we're going to do this with working with the advisory group and sharing the results of this all along the way. Supervisor Faust, did you have any final thoughts?
No final thoughts, but final comment, and that is thank you so much to you, Joanne, and staff, and in particular to the residents who took the time. I think we all love McLean, but I think most of us appreciate the fact that it can be so much more than what it is. And the things you identified and talked about tonight, I would say it sounded to me like you nailed it. We know, I think you helped us, create the target, and next, then we just got to make sure it happens. But I know there's a lot of steps between now and finalizing your product, Joanne, but I think one major step was taken this evening, and so I thank you all.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for sticking with us. I know we're running a little over time. Let me tell you all my email address one more time. And and also my office number. And I'm happy to talk with anyone after the fact and continue to collect comments. And I am sorry about the frustration of the technology. This is simply a work in progress. So again, my name, Joanne Phoebe, Joanne Phoebe, Fiebe, at fairfaxcounty.gov. And I am going to post it in the chat for anyone that can see it there. And then my office number is 703-324-9308. 703-324-9308. So I will post it in the chat, and I want to just thank every one of you for coming out tonight. I really do believe that we've captured a lot of good information that we can use now. So thank you again. And have a good evening. Bye all.